by a killer who's become known as the Night Stalker, a killer who apparently struck again during the weekend.
Victims range between the ages of 16 and 80, from women alone to couples with children. Some have been strangled, some shot.
He strangled, he used a ligature, he used a tire iron on a young girl, beat her, left her for dead.
It was the summer of 1985, and radio stations across Los Angeles were broadcasting emergency warnings. Police told people to stay home, lock their windows and doors, and keep some kind of protection nearby if they could. Fear spread fast. People were afraid to fall asleep, and honestly, they had every reason to be. The Night Stalker was somewhere close, and this wasn't just a dramatic intro, I mean that literally. Even before the official warning, the city was already on edge. News reports were filled with brutal killings across Los Angeles and the San Francisco Bay Area. There was no clear motive, and the victims seemed random. Before long, the media gave him a name, the Night Stalker. Late on June 28, 1984, a murder took place that would later be seen as the beginning of the series. 79-year-old Jenny Vincow was found dead in her Glassell Park apartment. She was attacked in her own bed and stabbed multiple times in the head, neck, and chest. One wound was so severe that her head was nearly severed. Police found the window open and the screen removed. The pattern was already there. He entered homes at night, attacked the victims in a frenzy, and then robbed the place. Even though this was only the first known murder tied to him, it already showed his style. Chaotic, bloody violence with no obvious logic behind the choice of victims. Then came 9 months of silence. No similar crimes, no strong leads. It was like he had disappeared. Everything changed on March 17th, 1985. That night, the attacker ambushed 22-year-old Maria Hernandez outside her home in Rosemead. As she stepped into the garage, he fired a .22 caliber pistol at her face. She instinctively raised her hands, still holding her keys, and the metal key ring deflected the bullet so it only grazed her. She fell to the ground and pretended to be dead, which saved her life. The man in a black jacket looked at her briefly, seemed to think she was dead, and went inside the house. There, 34-year-old Dale Yoshi Okazaki was hiding behind the kitchen counter after hearing the shot. But when she carefully peeked out, he fired and killed her instantly with a shot to the forehead. Hernandez later described him as an unkempt man with curly hair and rotten teeth. He also left behind an AC/DC baseball cap. Less than an hour later, he attacked again. In Monterey Park, he pulled 30-year-old Tsai Leon Yu from her car, shot her twice, and fled. She later died in the hospital. 3 attacks in one evening. He moved with confidence, and the randomness of the victims made the case even harder to understand. At that point, police still didn't officially see the crimes as the work of a serial killer, because there were no obvious links between the victims. 10 days later, on March 27th, he broke into the home of 64-year-old Vincent Zazzara and his 44-year-old wife, Maxine. Vincent was shot in bed while asleep. Then the attacker beat Maxine, tied her up, and searched the house for valuables. But Maxine fought back. She grabbed a shotgun hidden under the bed and pointed it at the man in the black jacket. The problem was that it wasn't loaded. Her husband had removed the shells before their grandchildren visited. So when she pulled the trigger, all she heard was a soft click. Enraged, the attacker shot her several times, grabbed a kitchen knife, carved an upside-down cross into her chest, and removed her eyes, taking them with him. He then tried to assault her, but failed and fled, After that, police stopped treating these crimes like ordinary break-ins. It was obvious now that this killer, someone who seemed to enjoy the violence itself, while money and jewelry were just an added bonus. From there, the attacks kept coming.
The crimes are different, but the method is always the same. He enters private homes at night through an unlocked door or open window and hunts down his prey while they sleep.
I've left my windows open before, but not anymore.
That was the thread connecting everything. He always moved under cover of darkness and gave his victims almost no chance to survive. Not everyone died, though. Some were left alive, sometimes after being tortured or forced to follow his commands. At several crime scenes, he left inverted pentagrams, 666s, or short messages written in lipstick on the walls. He wore gloves and used whatever weapons fit the moment. Knives, handguns, handcuffs, metal bars, and tire irons. On top of everything else, the killer sometimes even vomited at the crime scenes, unknowingly leaving behind DNA. At first, the media couldn't even agree on what to call him. Some used the walk-in killer, others called him the Valley Intruder. But KPTV reporter Henry Nichols came up with Night Stalker because the attacker struck at night, breaking into people's homes while they slept. That name stuck forever. The Night Stalker was a true psychopath, and the violence only kept escalating. On July 20th, 1985, he bought a machete and headed to Glendale. His first victims that night were 66-year-old Layla Knighting and her 68-year-old husband, Maxon. He burst into their bedroom, attacked them with the machete, then shot them with a handgun. Even after they were dead, he struck them again before searching the house and stealing valuables. Later that same night, he broke into another home in Sun Valley. He shot 32-year-old Chainarong Kausananth in the head while he slept, then attacked his wife, 32-year-old Somkid. He beat and assaulted her, dragged her through the house, demanding money and valuables, tied up their 8-year-old son, and forced Somkid to swear to Satan that she wasn't hiding anything. That was one of the reasons police started wondering whether satanic beliefs, or at least an obsession with occult imagery, were part of his motives. Detectives focused on the symbols, the messages on the walls, the gestures, and the phrases he forced victims to repeat. The question was whether it was just intimidation or something he truly believed in. In San Francisco, authorities formed a task force of 60 officers, detectives, and specialists. Patrols increased and streets were watched around the clock. But none of it stopped him. At first, Los Angeles police thought the March murder of the young woman was an isolated case. But as more attacks happened, they realized it was part of a much larger series. The victims didn't match, the neighborhoods didn't match, and the methods varied. But the pattern stayed the same. Nighttime home invasions through unlocked doors or windows, often with messages written on walls and the victim's lipstick. After killing Peter and Barbara Pan, for example, he carved the words, "Jack the Knife," into a wall, likely a reference to Jack the Ripper. That same night, he also left behind a shoe print, later traced to an Avia sneaker. The investigation moved slowly, but eventually detectives found that the same unusual shoe print appeared at multiple crime scenes. Frank Salerno and Gil Carrillo contacted Avia and learned the shoe model was extremely rare. Only 6 pairs of those men's size 12.5 sneakers had ever been made. 5 were sold in Arizona and 1 was sold in Los Angeles. That became the first major clue, suggesting all the crimes were connected to one person. Then came the ballistic evidence. Tests showed that Bullets from different attacks had been fired from the same guns. Once police combined the ballistics, the shoe prints, and statements from surviving victims, they were finally able to say with confidence that one man was behind the entire series. But not everything police did helped. At one point, San Francisco Mayor Dianne Feinstein held a press conference and revealed far too much about the investigation. Everyone, please take a close look at this composite sketch. He is the man breaking into homes at night and killing people. The ballistics from the weapon that killed Mr. and Mrs. Pan. As I understand it, those ballistic findings are also connected to murder committed in Southern California. She publicly revealed the weapon caliber, crime scene details, and even parts of the investigative methods. Detectives were furious because they knew the killer was following the news. If he heard that information, he could destroy evidence or change his behavior. And that's exactly what happened. The Night Stalker threw his sneakers off a bridge into a river, then returned to Los Angeles and kept killing. On August 24th, 1985, he got into a stolen orange Toyota and drove about 75 miles south from Los Angeles to Mission Viejo. That night, he ended up near the home of 45-year-old James Romero Sr. and his 13-year-old son, James Romero Jr. To keep it simple, I'll call them Senior and Junior. Junior couldn't sleep, so he went outside to grab a pillow from the family pickup truck. When he got there, he found it locked. Then he heard rustling nearby. At first he thought it was an animal, but after checking and finding nothing, he went back to the garage. A little later, he heard quiet movement again, ran back inside, looked out the window, and saw a man creeping around outside the house. Junior woke his parents immediately. The family rushed outside, and while Senior tried to understand what was happening, Junior noticed something important: the color and model of the stranger's car as it sped away, along with part of the license plate. Senior called police, likely thinking they had scared off a burglar. But later that same night, after that failed attempt, the Night Stalker broke into the home of 30-year-old Bill Carnes and his fiancée, 29-year-old Inez Erickson. He entered through the back door and went straight to the bedroom. As usual, he planned to shoot his victim while he slept. But the sound of the gun woke Bill. Bill had no time to react. The attacker shot him 3 times in the head. Then he turned to Inez, called himself the Night Stalker, forced her to swear she loved Satan, beat her, and tied her up with shoelaces from the closet. After searching the house for valuables, he dragged her into another room and assaulted her. He then demanded hidden money and jewelry and made her swear by Satan that nothing else was there. Before leaving, he said, "Tell them the Night Stalker was here." Once she was sure he was gone, Inez freed herself and ran to the neighbors for help. Bill survived. Doctors removed 2 of the 3 bullets from his head. Inez gave police a detailed description of the attacker. That description, along with the car seen near the Romero house, helped police narrow the search. Detectives released the details. A 1976 orange Toyota station wagon, license plate 482RTS. After the information went public, detectives got a call from a man who said his friend's car had recently been stolen in Chinatown, and it perfectly matched the one the suspected Night Stalker had been driving. Police soon got the full plate number, and 4 days later, on August 28th, they found the car abandoned in a parking lot in Koreatown, Los Angeles. Officers set up surveillance, hoping the suspect would return, but he never did. Forensics found a partial fingerprint on the rear-view mirror, though detectives still had no idea who it belonged to. This was long before automated databases, so they couldn't just scan the print and get a match. Everything had to be done manually and without a suspect. That print alone was useless. So police turned to the public and asked anyone with possible information to call the hotline. Then a woman reported that her homeless father had met a man he believed was the killer. According to him, the man was named Rick, was from El Paso, had rotten teeth, wore an AC/DC cap, and had confessed to the Monterey Park murder. He talked openly about killing a woman, shared details only the attacker should have known, and claimed he planned to commit even more bloody crimes. Most importantly, he had given the homeless man a gun, which was later taken to Tijuana and passed on to someone else there. Detectives went to Tijuana with the homeless man and tracked down the weapon. It turned out to be a revolver. Along with it, they found a tape recorder that investigators later confirmed had been stolen from a murder scene. They verified that by matching its serial number to paperwork kept by the victim's grandson. At that point, police knew they were getting close. They needed to find this so-called Rick from El Paso, the man giving away trophies from Night Stalker crime scenes. So detectives released descriptions of stolen items. Then came a break. A man named Earl Gregg turned over a bracelet he had received from his mother-in-law in Boyle Heights because he suspected it might be connected to the Night Stalker. Police tracked her down, and she said the bracelet had been a gift from her boyfriend, Armando Rodriguez. Armando, in turn, had gotten it from a man named Rick. Inspectors Carl Klotz and Frank Falzon found Armando and questioned him. And what was this Rick's last name? Armando basically told them to get lost. That was the real quote. Falzon didn't appreciate the attitude and punched him in the head, which explains the bruise on his cheek. Armando quickly understood this wasn't going to be a polite conversation and finally gave them the name, Richard Ramirez. Now, what creates someone like this? Before I get to how they finally caught him, I need to look at the kind of life that shaped him. Richard Ramirez was born Ricardo Leyva Munoz Ramirez on February 29, 1960, in El Paso, Texas. He was the fifth child of Julian and Mercedes Ramirez. His father, a former Mexican police officer, worked construction after moving to the United States. He had a violent temper and ruled the family with constant abuse. He beat his wife, his children, and sometimes even himself. After hurting someone, he would occasionally hit himself with a hammer out of guilt. In other words, he was deeply unstable. The family lived in poverty, but even in all that chaos, the parents still hoped their kids would grow up decent and build a life in America. Richard's mother, Mercedes, was the opposite of his father, gentle, caring, and trying to create warmth in a house ruled by fear. She worked in a boot factory. As a child, Richard seemed fairly normal. He didn't show the typical warning signs people usually expect in stories like this. He wasn't known for hurting animals or attacking other kids. Mostly, he was just withdrawn and kept to himself. People often point to one detail from early childhood. When he was 2, a dresser fell on his head. But it didn't seem life-changing. He only suffered a mild concussion. So what changed? Poverty pushed Richard's older brothers into crime. It started with petty theft and later became burglary. That was how they made money, and much of it went to drugs. Richard knew what was happening, and so did his father. who responded by beating the boys in front of the younger children as a warning. Later, Richard himself started sniffing glue as a teenager. As time went on, he drifted further from his family and spent more time with his cousin Miguel. And this is where things got much darker. Miguel, also called Cousin Mike, had served in Vietnam and claimed he had committed war crimes there. He showed Richard Polaroid photos that allegedly depicted rape, torture, and mutilation of civilians, mostly women. Some of those images were so disturbing, they're hard to describe directly. What matters is that Richard became obsessed with them. According to reports, he masturbated to those photos for years, and later he did the same thing at some murder scenes. So it's fair to say that in his mind, sex and violence became deeply connected. Richard and Cousin Mike were always smoking weed together, and weed cost money. So Richard followed the example of his older brothers and started getting cash through petty theft and burglary. That became their whole pattern. Miguel passed down what he claimed to have learned in Vietnam: how to use a knife, stalk victims, and kill without drawing attention, while Richard paid for weed and shared it with him. The more time Richard spent with Miguel, the angrier his father became, and the violence at home got even worse. Eventually, to avoid being beaten, Richard started sleeping in a cemetery. The real turning point came on May 4th, 1973, when 13-year-old Richard witnessed a murder with his own eyes. Miguel and his wife fought constantly. During one of those arguments, Richard was visiting their house and was in the room when Miguel suddenly snapped, pulled out a gun, and shot his wife in the face. At trial, Mike was declared legally insane. After a few years of treatment, he was released in 1977, and before long, he started influencing Richard again. But by then, Richard had become even more withdrawn, and his fantasies were already tangled up with the violent sexual imagery Miguel had planted in his mind years earlier. That same year, Richard moved to Los Angeles, where his older brother Ruben was already living. Ruben introduced him to sex shops and drugs. But that wasn't all. He also pulled Richard deeper into real crime. Ruben was a burglar, and he taught him the trade: how to avoid alarms, get past dogs, and figure out the easiest way into somebody else's house. After returning to El Paso, Richard started going hunting, and he seemed to enjoy it. But what interested him wasn't family bonding out in nature. It was gutting animals. His parents were devoted Jehovah's Witnesses, and Richard found that deeply alienating. It irritated him so much that he became interested in Satanism. Later, Richard went to stay with his sister Ruth, and her husband Roberto quickly became another bad influence. He would take Richard out to spy on neighbors. Sometimes they watched women changing clothes. Other times they watched couples have sex with the curtains open. One day Ruth caught them, but that didn't stop Richard. He just started doing it alone.
I'm not going to blame society, my race, or people, or anything. It is up to the individual like myself to keep on knocking on whatever door they want to get into.
Around that time, Richard got a job at a Holiday Inn, and with a pass key in his pocket, he started stealing from sleeping guests. By now, the pattern was already forming. It was also there that he made his first known attempt to sexually assault a woman, but it went badly for him. Her husband caught him in the act, beat him badly, and called the police. But once again, Ramirez got lucky. The charges were dropped because the couple didn't want to travel back to Texas for the trial. Not long after that, he quit school and went back to Los Angeles. There, he got even deeper into Satanism and occult ideas while also diving headfirst into hard drugs. At first, he made money selling marijuana he had brought from El Paso. When that ran out, he switched to stealing cars and committing petty theft. He was arrested several times, but because those crimes were seen as minor, he kept getting released. Still, that was enough to get him into the system, and his fingerprints were taken. Like I said before, there was no computerized database back then. Just physical fingerprint cards that had to be checked by hand when needed. There were more serious crimes too. During that period, he forced himself on a woman for the first time after she rejected him. One detail that matters is what happened in his mind afterward. Ramirez felt empowered by it, and he connected that new sense of power to a book he had started reading that same week, The Satanic Bible by Anton LaVey. 6 years later, he would begin the spree that made him known as the Night Stalker. Inspectors Carl Klotz and Frank Falzoni came back to the station with the suspect's name. Detectives started digging through correctional and prison records, looking for men with that name who had prior arrests for burglary or auto theft, because those old record cards also included fingerprints. Experts carefully compared those prints to the partial fingerprint lifted from the Toyota's rearview mirror. Eventually, they got a match. On that fingerprint card was Ramirez's photo. By August 30th, 1985, detectives had finally confirmed the suspect's identity. Now they just had to catch him. An arrest warrant was issued right away, but police leadership made a controversial choice. They decided to release Ramirez's name and photo before he was actually in custody. Detectives and inspectors strongly opposed it because they feared people might take justice into their own hands. But at the same time, nobody knew how many more victims there might be if it really was him. So this wasn't just a tactical decision, it was a moral one too. And honestly, this is the kind of thing people always argue about in the comments. If you were the one making that call, what would you do? Release the suspect's name, knowing an angry crowd might go after him, even though his guilt wasn't proven yet, and there was still a chance he was innocent? Or keep everything quiet and try to arrest him first, even if that meant risking more victims if he really was the killer? Tell me what you think, because I genuinely want to read those opinions. Then police officials in San Francisco and Los Angeles held a live press conference, showed Ramirez's photo, and publicly named him as the suspect. By the very next day, August 31st, 1985, his face was splashed across the front page of every newspaper. That same day, Ramirez walked into a liquor store, saw his own face in the headlines, and immediately bolted. He jumped onto a bus, trying to get to one of his brother's places in Los Angeles and hide out. But people on the bus recognized him. One man who was reading a newspaper suddenly stood up, hit the stop button, got off, and ran to a phone booth. Ramirez noticed that, got off too, and started running. But everywhere he went, people recognized him and called police, reporting where he was and which way he was headed. LAPD threw everything they had at the search. Patrol units all over the city, even police helicopters, toward the area where he was believed to be trying to escape. Ramirez quickly realized he wasn't going to get far on foot. He needed a car. First, he tried to steal a Mustang, but the owner fought back and beat him up, so Ramirez ran again. This time he changed tactics and tried to carjack a woman. A man named Manuel de la Torre saw what was happening, ran at Ramirez, and hit him in the head with a metal bar. Ramirez tried to get away, but Manuel caught up and hit him again. This was happening on Hubbard Street. By then, people had already recognized him and started pouring out of their houses. At that point, he was literally being chased by a mob. And it didn't last long. They caught him and boxed him in. Someone in the crowd even told his wife to bring him a gun so he could shoot the monster. Right around then, a police patrol car finally pulled up on Hubbard Street. By the time officers arrived, the crowd was already beating Ramirez badly. And when he saw the cops, he actually looked relieved. For once, Ramirez was taken into custody, but the crowd surrounded the patrol car and tried to drag him out to kill him. He responded by sticking out his tongue and spitting at them. Somehow the officers managed to get the situation under control. At the station, police brought in witnesses and surviving victims. They also ran lineups, and every witness identified Ramirez. Now, to be fair, his face had already been plastered across the newspapers, so chances are people would have picked him anyway. But procedure is procedure. During questioning, Ramirez said he had been inspired by Ted Bundy and the Hillside Strangler. And yeah, if you want, I can do videos on them too, just tell me in the comments. He also admitted that he stole jewelry and money to buy drugs. At trial, Ramirez raised his hand to show a pentagram and 3 6s drawn on it, then shouted, "Hail Satan." He repeated it several times. On September 20th, 1989, he was convicted on all 43 charges: 13 murders, 5 attempted murders, 11 sexual assaults, and 14 burglaries. The court sentenced him to death in California's gas chamber. But that sentence was never carried out. California's death penalty system got tied up for years in appeals and legal fights. His lawyers kept filing challenge after challenge, and the execution never happened. In the end, Ramirez lived until June 7th, 2013, when he died from complications related to hepatitis. And somehow, that still wasn't the strangest part. While he was in prison, he got flooded with attention from female fans. They sent letters, nude photos, and even love confessions. He actually ended up marrying one of them. If you found this story interesting, make sure to subscribe and leave a like. Thanks for watching, and take care.